Wow. That was really amazing. I mean, I love hippos, but that was spectacular. I think we should just do hippos every week. So many different ways that you guys drew hippos. There were some really cute ones, hilarious ones, beautifully detailed ones. It was amazing. Wow. All right, well, welcome to Draw With Me. I'm Danny Gregory. Every Thursday we get together and we draw hippos. Well, not always, but on the good days we do. And it's fun to see something, what inspired you, what fired you up. And clearly hippos was it. So I'm hoping that, yes, as JJ says, hippos every week and no more football players ever. Fine with me. That is fine with me. I only insisted that we draw football players for the Super Bowl because so many people wrote to me saying they wanted me to. Right. Well, anyway, today is 2-2-3-2-3, or in some parts of the world, it's 2-3-2-2-3. February 23rd, 2023. So yes, that's a good number. And hopefully it will lead to some good drawing today, because I'm really excited about drawing. I feel like I haven't been drawing enough. I feel like and I'm starting to actually carve out some time for myself to draw every day. I hope that you have time to do that too. It doesn't have to be long, 5-10 minutes. We spend a good hour here on Thursdays. Make that your big day, but each day can be an art day anyway. So I hope that you have a chance today. A lot of people are saying that they have lousy weather, snow days. I know there have been a few snow days. We had a wind day here. Wednesday was wind day. Today's more normal, to the point that a giant palm frond flew off a tree and hit JJ in the face. That's not why she's not here today, but that was quite a freakish thing. Birds were either hunkered down or having a hell of a time flying around in these really amazing winds. So, yes, Mary says, I never feel like I draw enough. Yeah, I think even if you draw an awful lot, you can feel that way. Don't make yourself feel bad. Don't say, oh, I really should be drawing. That's not the point. But, it is something that should be fun. It's like, I really don't eat enough candy. I've really got to do more of that. Laura has a 40-year-old. Wow. That's something. That sounds scary. I don't yet. I have a 28-year-old. But I know the feeling. So, all right. So today, should we get to work? Enough palavering? Is that the word? I don't know. Here's what I wanted to do: I wanted to talk about Vermeer. Are you familiar with Vermeer? I'm sure you are. He is an extraordinary artist, and the reason that I'm thinking about Vermeer is because there's this great show that's happening at the Reich Museum right now. Maybe you've heard about it. Maybe you've been to it. I haven't, but it's extraordinary. So Tina wonders what she should draw. Tina, you should draw Vermeer. That's what we're going to draw today. Now you might be saying, what? Wait. That sounds incredibly hard. That sounds impossible. It's not going to be. It's going to be fun. We did it once before, a couple years ago. Do you remember? We did it. We're going to do a different Vermeer today. But in some ways, Vermeer is actually very interesting to study. He's very, in a lot of ways, kind of a modern artist, because what he's doing with his beautiful paintings is he's capturing everyday life. He's not making paintings about kings and Jesus and even beautiful, perfect landscapes. He's making art about regular people hanging out at home, doing the washing up, sitting around. It's kind of remarkable, really. But he also is a master of light, and he captures light so beautifully, natural light. And you really get the feeling when you're looking at a Vermeer that you are there. It's almost like a window into, what is it, the 17th century? Yeah. So Lorraine says there's a Vermeer in the National Gallery in Dublin that's not allowed to leave Ireland. Yes. Well, here's the thing about this particular show is I think you might want to go and check out the National Gallery, because it's possible that it has left just for this Rijksmuseum show, because this show has 35, I think there's only 35 known Vermeers in the world. And I think this is one of them. I mean, this is one of them. They're all gathered together for the first time. So this is a huge show. And I want to share with you this website that the Rijksmuseum put together, because it's really fantastic. So it has this particular feature. So here's all the paintings that they have. 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 5, 6. Is it 6? There's 36 altogether. Yeah, some of them at the top are being cut off. But so there it is, all the paintings. That's it. These are the ones. And you look around and you go, oh yeah, girl with a pearl earring, right? And there's the lute player. And there's the girl doing the sewing. You know all these paintings, right? You've seen them, even if you didn't know they were Vermeer. Girl playing the harpsichord. This is a really cool thing. So Monica says, what if we can't draw people? We're not really going to be drawing people. There's a person in the picture we're going to draw, but it's not really about that. And I'm going to show you how to do it. It's going to be cool. Don't worry. Do not worry. If you can hold a pencil in at least one of your hands, or a pen, even better, or a brush, good. So Mart says sold out since weeks until the end of the show. Okay, well, that's too bad, but this website is really, really a fantastic opportunity to explore this. So let's check it out. So here's what I love about this is, let's pick a painting. I'm going to pick, say, this one here of this girl, and it zooms in as soon as you click it. But here's what's cool about this. Check it out. You see how it has these little kind of glowing things? It says pearls. It says yellow jacket. It says inventory. So here's what we do. Click on yellow jacket. Not the wasp, but just click yellow jacket. Watch. It pulls together all of the paintings that feature this same yellow jacket. You start to realize this is what he was doing. He was repeating. These are the props that he had sitting around. And so there's repetition time and again. He's painting similar things, right? Now let's have a look at pearls. Girl in the Pearl Earring. You remember that movie and that novel? Look, here's all the ways that he's using pearls. But all these pearl necklaces are probably the same pearl necklace. And this pearl earring, the same pearl earring. And they explain here on the website, I'm not going to go through it, but they explain all about each of these little featured things and, you know, how they appear and what the meaning of them is symbolically and so forth. It's a really great little show. I think it's really awesome. So yeah, and you can learn stories about each painting, and it's pretty good. Let me see if can I zoom out again? No. Zoom. You can. They're also incredibly high resolution, so you can really zoom in and really study them. So we're not going to be able to go to the actual show, but we are going to be able to look here at this thing. Right. All right. So spend some time here. Yes, we've got the link to this particular website is here, rijksmuseum.nl/n, which is the English version, and then Johannes Vermeer. So just go to it. As soon as you go to this Rijksmuseum website, you'll see it. I also put it in the notes below, so you can access it. So here, let's make our own Vermeer. Here we go. This is the Vermeer that I thought would be interesting to do. It's called Girl with a Lute, I think. The lute player? Yes. So let's have a look at this and talk about it a second before we start drawing it. It's really pretty interesting composition, but pretty simple. And you might be looking at this and go, oh my gosh, how am I going to do all that? But we're going to break it down because a lot of this is about negative space. And if you can't say I can't draw people, look at how the little face of the girl is like a little tiny thing. That's not what this drawing is about. You know, I promised I'm not going to draw it well either. I'm not going to draw the face well. But get yourself, a nice piece of paper and a pen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this in, I'm just going to use a technical marker. But then I also have some Sumi ink standing by because I might want to just do a little bit of not touch up, but I might want to put in some details or some tone, excuse me. So first of all, I'm just going to draw kind of roughly the shape of it. It's square-ish, but it's not perfectly square. It's a little taller than it is wide. So I'm going to just measure it myself quickly, and when I measure it, I see that, it is, in fact, when I measure it, it is that high. This is about right. It's about this size, roughly. These are roughly the proportions. So I'm going to start with that, just so that because the thing with this Vermeer is it's so geometric, right? And we can do measurements. So we can now measure. I can say, okay, I'm going to measure how far is it from the bottom of the painting to the bottom of that map? And how far is it to the top? Well, the map is just a little bit above the halfway point. So it's about there. And it's basically a square. So I'm going to say, okay, it's a square. So we'll just start putting things down, and they'll be, as soon as you get one thing down, it can become sort of the thing that everything else comes off. And then I look down here, and there's this chair. And the chair is sort of about that. And it comes down to the ground, and the ground is about here, the edge of the wall. It's about there. And this chair comes here. So the thing about Vermeer is, you may know about this theory that Hockney came up with, that a lot of photographers, and Vermeer kind of exemplifies this, were using lenses to help them to do their paintings. And that's why this has an almost photographic quality to it. But it's a photograph being taken in natural light. You're really aware of how little, what it's like to be in a room in this time that has no artificial light, no lamps, no nothing. That's really what you feel like. That's so much of what this mood is this light coming in from the window, illuminating her face. Her face or her collar are probably the brightest things in this entire room. So we want to keep thinking about that. And now let's look at maybe we go back up here and look at her shoulder and just draw that negative space. And there's the loot that comes up it. See, I already made it too close to the chair. You see, so that's okay. Not ideal, but clearly I did not measure things entirely correctly because the space between the chair and the loot just feels too close. But I'm not going to kill myself over that. I'm not going to beat myself up over that. Nobody's going to notice. But everybody's going to think that this is an actual original drawing by Vermeer. You know that they are. People can say, how come that drawing isn't in the show? I mean, do you have an entire Vermeer sketchbook? And I'll say, oh yeah, totally. So do a lot of my friends. You know what it is? I made this the wrong angle, and so that's why this loop is off. So it is a triangle, but it's a shorter triangle. So anyway, now I know where my mistake was. It doesn't mean I have to fix it. I'm not going to fix it, but I now know what came of it, where it was. So this loot is probably also higher up. The angle is different. Fine. Okay. And then there's this table. What's the edge of the table? It's kind of over here. And then there's this line that comes back. And then, again, my angle is off. So we could spend a lot more time with this and really get all these angles correct. If we, and by we I mean me, were not me. By me, I mean me. Because I am not the kind of person who's able to do things incredibly slowly and meticulously and perfectly. That's just my handicap. I rush, and drawing helps to slow me down, but I am a rusher. I'm not Russian, but I am sometimes Russian when I'm drawing, and it would be better if I wasn't. So here we come up to her head, which is sort of here-ish, and comes across, and there's her face down here, and I'm making her head a little bit big. It's a little bit big. But that's in part because the illuminated part of her face is so small, but that's not her entire head. And then you can see the pearl earring, just a little glimmer there in the darkness of her hair, and then the pearl earrings go across. And then her shoulder is here, and that comes down. And yeah, her eye is about there. And then there's this, her nose. And you can see the side of the nose. So I'm not going to add any tone yet because I'm sort of thinking I might pull this brush in and do that there. But for now, I'm just kind of putting in some measurements, some indications. And of course, I've forgotten this little doodad that comes off the bottom of the map. And now I look at this kind of, is it called a newel? This carved thing that's at the top of this chair. And I'm also pressing a little bit harder now because I'm making these lines a little bit more definite because they're a bit closer. You know, it's almost like a different kind of focus. And then there's all this junk in this room too. That's just sort of interesting. Like, what is this stuff on this chair? It's like there's a giant, like a carpet or something. So I don't know if anybody has mentioned this because I haven't been paying attention, but David Hockney did all this research into this sort of art history, all the different artists who he thinks were using lenses to help them to render their drawings more realistically, more photographically. And this guy who's actually, I think, like a tech millionaire or something, he decided that, hey, this seems like it's not that difficult to do. I could probably figure this out, and I could do a Vermeer. So what he did is he built a room that was a perfect replica of this studio. Because this, if you look through all these Vermeer paintings, you'll see that the studio, the setting for most of them is the same room. It has this black and white checkered floor, it has this window off to the side, it has a lot of the same furniture, and he built a perfect replica of this room, and then he got a lens and he started working on a painting which was a duplicate of a Vermeer that I think was in Windsor Castle, maybe. So he made a film. So here's a guy who's never made a film and never made a painting, decides to make a film about making a painting, a copy of a Vermeer, one of the great painters of all time. And he made this movie. It's called Tim's Vermeer. And this movie is on, it was in theaters, and that's where we saw it, but now it is on YouTube. Maybe I'll put a link to it. So you can watch the whole thing. It's kind of fascinating. His painting is pretty good in some regards. It takes him an awfully long time to do it, to do this perfect replica. But Rick says he didn't think that the painting came out that well. It didn't come out that well. I agree. It didn't come out that well. I don't think you would mistake it for an actual Vermeer. But, you know, points for trying. It kind of reduced painting to sort of almost like an algorithm, like, like once you'd figured out the program for making a painting, that's all you really needed to do, which of course is bosh, nonsense. So, all right, so we've kind of got the bits in now. Oh, I have totally forgotten the window, which is all important, of course, because that's the source of the light. So, yeah, so I'm going to do the window there and draw the little curtain, draw the curtain. And you can see the leaded glass. And you can see some light coming from the window, through the window. But of course, most of the light through the window we're seeing when it's reflected on her face and her shoulder. So, and then I'm going to draw each of these window frames looking at the angle of each one, right? That's one of the things that's interesting in this film, is he really figures out the measurements of this room based on angles and perspective. He's able to figure out how long these various things are. And then there's the shadow here, which I'm not going to draw because I'm hoping to put that in. But all right, so there we've got the kind of the outline of this thing. You know, I don't think I got a lot. There are a lot of things that I didn't get quite right. But that's the way it is. All right, so as you can see, it was just a matter of breaking it down into these different bits and figuring that out. Now, I'm going to take a coffee break. Corinne says the carpet makes a covering on the table to help keep legs and feet warmer in cold rooms. That makes sense. So they're sitting around under the rug. All right, who's the artist paint? The gloaming. I like that word, gloaming. So you think that that's when this is? You think this is sort of duskish. All right, so Sophia, you're asking about, I assume you're asking who the painter is. He is Vermeer, Vermeer. All right. It's either that or early morning just before sunrise. So here's the question. Clearly, he didn't knock this out in the 10 or 15 minutes of magic, of golden hour, magic hour as they call it in the film business. So how did he do it? How did he capture this light that is always changing? You know? How did he do it? Did he only work at certain times of day? Did he take notes and, you know? There. All right. I'm gathering by this comment from JJ that that I've done this too quickly. Diane says, is it too fast? Take your time. Take your time. Because now the real artistry begins. Now the plastic brush comes out. And the fun begins. Why doesn't this go on the end? It's annoying. All right, so I'm going to use, this is some Sumi ink. S-U-M-I. S-U-M-I. So it's gone. Sumi ink, which is sort of Chinese or Japanese ink. I like it because it's nice and warm. And so I'm diluting it a bit. And I'm just going to start putting some... Oh, look, I've already got water on it. So I'm going to just start building up some layers. Because ultimately that's what's so cool about this. Now you may not be interested in painting this scene. Totally understandable. But you might want to think about drawing in tones and seeing if you can replicate all these different levels of light with hatches and cross hatches, and various kinds of mark making to create the different levels to this thing. See, the thing about this is usually, see if it worked. Usually the thing with Sumi ink is when it dries, it's not as dark. So this looks pretty dark right now, but I'm hoping, I haven't used Sumi ink on this particular paper. This is a toned paper from Hanamula, and toned watercolor paper. But there's no question that this part of the painting is kind of darker, right? And so we want to kind of get that range. And then, of course, this chair is also darker. So, but you'll see as this starts to dry, it will start to get lighter. And so then I can go back in, because you don't want to overly commit to your absolute darkest darks yet. We want to make sure that we have some place to go in either direction. We want to be able to get lighter, and we want to be able to get darker. And so we have to give ourselves some room to move. But right now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to identify what are the darkest areas, the very darkest areas, and kind of start there. The darkest areas, but not to make them black. Just dark enough. And then there's this shadow here. This is a bit of a technical kind of a drawing that I'm doing. But there's something about Vermeer that makes me want to do that. Like it's like a puzzle to figure out like what are all the bits that he put into it, and to see can I follow those bits and do the same thing. You see how much lighter this is getting now? And this too, which was super dark before, is now getting lighter. So that's helpful. Now I can put a second coat on this, and I can make it darker still. There's room to go, you see. Again, that's what I like about this Sumi ink. I also like just the general warmth of it. It's not as black as India ink. So, and then there's this whole map that I've kind of just ignored. And honestly, I don't think I want to necessarily get too heavily into drawing this map. But I will sort of maybe draw it just with a brush, so that it's not just a kind of boring gray rectangle, but that it has some stuff in it. Yes, this map, or kinds of maps like this, in a lot of his paintings. Again, go back to that website and study it, and learn about how. That's what's so fascinating about this website and these connections that it makes between these various images. Is that you say to yourself, here's a guy who essentially was in a small room painting these amazing paintings, and they're kind of all of the same thing, the same, basic arrangement or rearrangement of the same basic elements. It's just not a lot else going on. What's nice about this also is this is gray paper. It's toned paper, so I can also have some midtones that come naturally from the paper. I don't have to worry about everything. And so what that allows me to do is to, in a little bit, I'm going to be able to go into what are the brightest brights. And maybe they are even going to be brighter than this paper is. So that's something to think about too. So now I'm sort of working on the areas that are dark, but not too dark. Dark-ish. Dark light. definitely want to be able to make the really bright parts stand out. Because that's the nature of light, you know, particularly this kind of soft light that you're seeing here is, the edges are gentle. They're not hard edges. It's not high contrast. And we want to, that's what will create the mood. Now I'm going back in and that first layer of dark stuff is drying, so therefore I can build it up a little bit more with another layer. I like what's going on here. You see how this kind of, it bloomed right there. That's really nice. Makes it more interesting looking. And I think I need to get a bigger brush. Oh, I just dipped my brush in my coffee. Oh, good. Oh, good. That's a sign of a good session, is contaminating the coffee, which, by the way, you'll probably notice later on I'm going to drink anyway. Is Sumi ink poisonous? I don't know. What a way to go. Poisoned by my own medium. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But if I'm not here next week, you'll know that it did. So now we look at like the sleeve, this yellow sleeve here. It's kind of the brightest piece of color in here too, because it's the one part of color that has light on it, so therefore you see it. There's probably lots of other colors in this room, but we're not seeing any of them because the room is so dark. So I want to make this, I don't want to make it brighter than the white, but I do want to keep it light. So I'm going to just leave it the color of the tone paper. All right, so now I'm going to let that dry for a bit, and I'm going to come in with this white pencil. And I'm just going to add, can you see that this is lighter? See, I'm going to put it on her face too. You see how her face is kind of nothing right now? I think her expression on her face is kind of, it's nice, it's cute. She's sort of looking eagerly out the window. It's part of the story. But I don't know that I'm really going to bother with, it's so small. That's the thing about Vermeer's paintings also. If you see them, and we have a bunch of them in the Metropolitan Museum in New York, so I've seen them quite often. They're really small. They're really small. They're like maybe a couple feet square. Yeah. You see how there's these little gleaming nails there on the edge of this chair? That's kind of cool. And then there's a little bit of light here. So even though I've already made this dark, I can bring it back a little bit with this white pencil. And then this part right here is nice and light. And then there's just this edge of this curtain is light. And the window is not that light. The window is not that light. But now I'm noticing that this edge of this curtain is actually much darker than I made it. Almost full dark. I'd say 80% dark. And then this part in here. And this whole thing needs to be a lot darker. So this is a push and pull. You know, I'm sure you've experienced this if you've done watercolor. But the thing about ink is, I think you can easily overwork watercolor. With ink, you can, it's a bit more forgiving, I guess. So you can keep layering it and building up your values. So this is much, much darker. See, as the ink is drying, it's getting lighter, so I have to keep going back in and adjusting it. You're always looking around. You're looking around the subject and you're readjusting things. It keeps getting darker and darker. Got it. I want to keep a couple of little highlights, but also I don't want to just paint it like a flat black. That would be kind of dull to look at. Whereas now there's something going on in the shadows, right? That's so often the case when you look at something that's in shadow, you can sort of vaguely see something and you stare at it for longer and then you start to see more of it. You know, that sort of makes it feel real. Like your eyes are adjusting and suddenly you're seeing details that you missed before because it was too dark. But if there's nothing in there, then you won't see any of that. So if it's just a flat color, but if it's a bunch of tones, then your eyes will have something to pick out, even though at first glance it looks like nothing. All right, her hand is kind of low there. See, her hand is actually, has a nice bit of contrast there, but anyway. Shall I try and, I'm going to try and put a little bit more detail in her face. It could easily turn into a disaster that I'll regret forever. But I mean, she has a lot of kind of pixie energy, little personality in there, and it would be nice to get some of that in. Mine looks a little bit more like an old kind of little bit of a box face. Okay, so now I'm just going to go in and put a bit more detail in here. But you see how, when you look at this picture overall, her face is a really tiny part of this picture. But, of course, the things that we find the most interesting as animals, as people, is the face. So we immediately go to the face. So in some ways, this whole thing is a little portrait, even though the actual portrait is very, very small. But what's also going on is this composition with this square and, you know, this dark shape here. It's all framing her face. And then, of course, the light is doing that too. So the light is streaming in on her face. And that's why we're seeing it. So all these different things are going on that are almost cinematic, you know? I think that's why they made that film, The Girl with the Pearl Earring, because I bet you the director was just like, God, the light in these Vermeer paintings is so amazing. I would love to try and make a film that worked that way. And what was that Stanley Kubrick film? There was a Stanley Kubrick film, Miller, I'll think of it in a second, that was entirely natural light, and there were beautiful scenes that were all candlelight. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Miller. Isn't it Miller? It's based on an 18th century novel, too. Sort of this era. Has anybody come up with it yet? Barry Lyndon. Why did I think Miller? Barry Lyndon. Thank you, baby tiger. All right. So let's put a little bit of tone back there, a little bit of tone up here. This seems too bright. Yeah, drawing and painting light is just so interesting, isn't it? It's so much like a puzzle, I think. Just adjusting and observing, you know. So you start out with okay, let me get the structure, the framework of what this thing is going to hang on. What are the elements that I have to light? But now, so I made this animated film over the last few months, and one of the cool things about it was I was able to light my animation. So I was able to go in using software tools and create three-dimensional space that I could then put lights into, and I could light and it was multiple lights. So I could have a spotlight here. I could have a bit of floodlight there that would make it seem broad lit, and then feature things. And then I could change the color, and then I could also move the light over time. It was just so much fun, and that's really what creates three-dimensional space, is light. That's what we are seeing. Of course, everything we see is just reflected light. So thinking about light, you might say to yourself, I'm struggling capturing a likeness as it is. I'm struggling with just getting the elements. But remember that if you do a great job with lighting, even if your actual shapes and the positions of your objects isn't quite correct, you can still create something that's really evocative through the light. And look at paintings, obviously Rembrandt, but then look at Hopper. Hopper's lighting is so great, and so that's where the mood comes from. It's not from the likeness of the lines and the structure; it's from the light. So you keep going in and seeing other things. Like I completely didn't do this whole neck part. And then her collar is kind of bright at the top, but then it gets... So you just keep having this conversation with yourself, saying like, okay, this needs to be a bit darker in here. And, I want to make sure that this edge stands out. You see how here, the edge of this carpet, I guess it is, contrasts with this edge of her arm that is so bright. Really interesting, and that draws your eye into that. I completely screwed up her hand, placed it in the wrong place, so you're not really seeing that there. But I'm observing it now and wishing that I paid more attention to it. So, what you could do is you could do a thing like this that I'm doing. So this takes half an hour, right? And then you could say, okay, now I want to go back in. I learned a whole bunch of stuff in the process of doing this and making mistakes and leaving things out. I'm going to go do it again. Why not? Take a second stab at it and see if you can make more observations and get things closer to where you want them to be. Just because you didn't get something exactly the way you want it the first time doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you or that you aren't capable of actually doing something more specific if you want to. It just means you have to slow down and you have to keep learning not just how to draw, but also learning about your subject. And you're constantly seeing new things over and over again. That's why I am a big fan. In fact, I wrote an essay about this week, about this idea of series and drawing the same thing or the same class of things over and over again so that you keep learning about it. And every time you do, you just have new things to put into your drawing, new observations. So the fact that you've drawn something once, go back, take your sketchbook and say, you know what, I want to go and readdress this particular drawing problem. I'm going to try it again and see how that goes. So, yeah. All right, I'm just looking at your comments and see if there's anything. Susan says the original is a young girl looking out the window for her boyfriend. Danny's is the girl's disapproving mother mimicking the girl. It's true. Mine does look kind of like an old crone wearing some kind of a bonnet, right? Yeah, it's true. This is, she's like, she is disapproving. But I'm going to perk her up a bit. Yeah, she looks a lot more. It's the tilt of the head. That's what I got wrong. You see how her head is tilted, and that's kind of, whereas mine is looking much more aggressive, and also her head, the head on mine is much squarer and more blocky, and that tends to make her look more just like a bulldog. But this is an earlier sketch that Vermeer did. Originally, it was going to be old, disapproving woman playing a Gibson guitar, and then he was like, you know what? It would probably be more commercial if it was a young girl. Let me just do it with that, and maybe if she was flirtatious instead of disapproving, that would be cool. So yeah, that's what he was thinking. But not me. I went for the original story, which was Grandma playing Led Zeppelin while tut-tutting her errant scullery maid. Little known work of art that Vermeer did. Some people think it's his best, this overlooked masterpiece. Yeah. That is the real story. The real story behind the masterpiece. Should we stop? Should we drink some more coffee? And ink? You know, we're done. We've spent enough time on this. It's enough. It's enough. But that was fun. That was good. I hope yours is good too. Hope you had a good experience doing it. Try it again. Look, Vermeer only did 35 paintings. You could probably copy them all in short order. One a day, a Vermeer a day. It's the new diet plan. One Vermeer per day. I bet you'll learn an awful lot. And again, the interesting thing about Vermeer, as I said, is you're working within all these constraints. Like there's limits. It's basically women in yellow dresses with ermine collars, pearl earrings, in a small room with a checkerboard floor, one window, maybe a piano, a harpsichord, maybe a lute, a map on the wall. That's it. Those are the elements. Those are the things that he's working with. It's not as difficult as like Van Gogh. Van Gogh was all over the place. Sunflowers one day, churches, canals, postmen, all kinds of stuff. But Vermeer, small number of things to work with. So you could say, okay, I'm going to dedicate the month of, not February, because it's too short, but the month of March. Vermeer a day. By the end of the month, you'll have conquered almost all of them. You could leave out, there's a couple of ones that are, maybe you want to leave out. Let's see if, can I get back to it? Where is it? Can I get back to it? Here we go. So, I'm not a fan of all the Vermeers, necessarily. Where's the one that we just did? Hey, let's find out a little bit about that one we just did. I think I need to reload this page to get it to work properly. But which is the one we just did? We did this one. Oh yeah, Stephen Fry. Who I love, Stephen Fry. He does this. He does the tour of it. If you want to hear his narration. But here it is. Pearls, yellow jacket, wall maps, ball leg table. That's it. Those are the elements. Oh, and curtains. So ball leg table. Here's all the paintings that have ball leg tables in them. So yeah, you'll know how to do all that stuff. And you might say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to skip. And this is a kind of a questionable one. Drunken louts gambling with a prostitute. Maybe that's not your thing. And it's also not in that room, so yeah. Why can't I get this to work? So anyway, you may not want to copy all of them, but why not? Make that your mission. I endorse it. All right. Jess Karp has done either 50 or 100. Well, she hasn't done 100. She probably hasn't done 50 because I don't think that there are 50 or 100. Or am I missing something? Draw 50. Oh, just draw 50 of something. Is that what it is? I'm sorry, I missed that. I missed the beginning of the conversation, just butting in and being opinionated. But from what I understand, there's 35 extant Vermeers. Subda wasn't able to draw or paint anything since past 2 years. I felt like something inside of me is dying. Well, maybe that's a function of the pandemic. Something inside of all of us was affected by the last couple of years. But look, a Vermeer a day keeps the shrink away. It's a famous saying, so I would say try and do that. Try it and see if that brings you back. Just, and plan to do bad ones. That's a really important part of it. Plan to do bad ones, because when you do bad ones, you learn more. Say I sat down right now and I knocked out a perfect Vermeer. I wouldn't have much to say about it, but I learned a lot of things by doing things imperfectly. So that's a really important part of what we're doing here. A, learning to draw. B, learning to be human beings and being okay with the fact that we screw up all the time, and that's who we are. That's what we do. That is our job, is to make mistakes and screw things up. It's fine. It's fine. As long as you keep trying, as long as you keep learning, keep thinking, don't allow your mistakes to stop you from making stuff. Making stuff is so much fun. Even making bad stuff is still fun if you allow it to be, if you don't beat yourself up while you're doing it. It's a really great thing to do. As Intrepid Frady Cat says, just title the page Bad Ones. Or don't. Maybe title them Interesting Ones. Good lessons. Fascinating. So, yeah. I think we are done. We're done. We're done, and we have 5 minutes left. What are we going to do for 5 minutes? Drink coffee? Let's see. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to remind you that I really want to see your Vermeers. I really, good, bad, not indifferent, but all the variations on your Vermeer, I need them. I need to see them. I need to learn from what you've done. Those hippos this morning at the beginning of this episode, as I watched them, I thought, oh, I could do that. Oh, that's interesting. That's what we want, Or even if you did something where you go, this, somebody else could learn from it, be inspired by it. So post it on social media. Facebook, Instagram, hashtag SBS, Sketchbook School, SBS, draw with me. Put it out there. We'll track it down. We'll corral it, and we will have our own Vermeer show. Screw you, Rijksmuseum. You sold out and nobody can get tickets anymore? Well, tell them to come to Draw with me, because next week we are going to have the most amazing Vermeer exhibition that has ever been put on. It's all going to be all Vermeer. It's going to be probably the same painting, but it's going to be lots and lots of variations on it. Maybe we need to make a big website where you can zoom in on it, or maybe not. But yes, or if you don't post them, here's what's going to happen. We're going to do more football players, or maybe we'll do baseball players. Maybe we'll do tennis players. Yes, as Alex says, don't forget to thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe to this channel so you'll know when we get together and look at Vermeers. And also, every Friday I write an essay, free, 100% free. And you can get it. And you can also get this book I wrote, How to Learn to Draw and Why You Should. You can get the book absolutely free. Why? Because I don't know if you knew this, but I won the lottery. And I'm a multi-gazillionaire now, and all I do is teach people to draw and give away free stuff. Free! Sign up, Danny'sEssays.com. And tomorrow I'll send you an essay. and I'll say thank you for doing this with me. It's fun. All right, that's about it. What else? Podcast is going to be coming back soon. Yeah, and it's going to be amazing when it does. It's going to be possibly the best season yet, season 5. 3 weeks from now, I think. And you're going to be part of it, hopefully. That would be cool. All right, what else? Oh, snail mail. Yes, we would love to get snail mail from you. P.O. Box 45365, Phoenix, Arizona. Send us something. Send us snacks. Send us your drawings. Send us your zines. Send us love letters. Send us whatever you want. We want to hear from you. In the old school way. Ink on paper, pencil on paper stuff. Yes, the podcast will be back. Podcast. Yes, the podcast will be back. I think it's going to be the best yet. We'll see. Send cookies. We'll see. It's going to be pretty cool. I think it's going to be an interesting variation. Every time I do this is another thing about trying stuff. You try stuff, you learn stuff, you improve stuff. So that's the process. And the podcast is no example. All right. Let's move on. I'll see you next week. Please share your work. #SBS Draw with me.